Hello, everybody, and welcome to Toffee Bluecast. What a show we have got for you today. We always try and push a good guest, and we've landed a cracking guest today, people. I think you'll really enjoy this one. Paul, how we doing? You okay?
Yeah, very good. I'm not a fan of international breaks, so this is perfect timing, to be fair, and I'm really excited about it.
Well, I did think when I spoke to the guest because I was itching to get him on straight away when we had that first game in the new stadium. And I did think over the international break where we're all bored and we want to talk about something that we love, what better time than today? Do get involved in the comments. I'm sure you'll all be there. Get your questions in. We'll try and get the odd question on the screen that we can. But let's introduce the guest anyway, because some of you might not know he's on the cover. He is on the cover, so you probably do know, right? So let's give him an introduction, everybody. Here he is. Dan Meis is on the Toffee Bluecast. We've got you on. How are we doing, Dan? You all right?
Yeah, I'm doing great. Happy to be here. It's very exciting. Thanks, guys.
We're so glad to get you on, and a perfect time as well, because I think we've all still got butterflies about this new stadium. I don't know when that new feeling's going to go, probably in about 20 years' time, because we're loving it.
Maybe not even then.
It is incredible, isn't it, Paul? Talk to me about that stadium, Paul.
Oh, well, I was lucky enough to go to Brighton. I didn't get a chance beforehand, and I was top of the South Stand. And that feeling that I got when I was what I would have been about 8, when I went up the Goodison steps in the main stand and then saw the pitch, and it was a night game, the lights and everything else. When that was, I mean, I'm 48, but I still had that feeling when I was a kid of walking up the steps and seeing the pitch and seeing the stands, which as an 8-year-old, Goodison Park were immense. This is almost the same feeling again, because obviously it's so much bigger. But to have that feeling walking up the steps, seeing the pitch and people in there, that was really special. And it went. That wasn't even the best part. It just all the experiences grew and grew and grew. And obviously the result was great and the performance was good. But yeah, special day. It was great.
Dan Meis. So let's get into it. How did this stadium design start? Take us back to when you first had that pen in your hands.
Yeah, it's as you can imagine, these things do have sort of roller coaster rides and twists and turns. When we first started sort of pitching on the project, we thought we didn't know about Bramley Moore at the time. Originally, there was some thought that it might be Walton Hall Park, and there were some hint of potential other sites. And but the one thing that I had learned early from a meeting with Robert Elstone was, and it's really sort of where the light bulb went off for me, that I thought, there's something that I can bring to this that I think maybe other architects might miss, was that it truly was more about the history of the club, the history of the place, the history of Goodison, and really what was unique about the experience of Goodison, and just the sort of generational attachment that fans had to that building. And in my view, I thought a lot of the new buildings that we were seeing elsewhere in the UK were really kind of missing, the real sort of magic that made English football so interesting. These buildings were very rarely designed all at one time. They tended to be a pitch with a stand, and then as the club grew, they would add a stand, and sometimes on top, and a different architect, different engineer. So you had these kind of quirky buildings that ended up really giving the building the character. And when you have sat with your grandfather or father or daughter in a certain section over generations, that all becomes really important to the memory of it. And yet what we were seeing in the modern buildings, I felt, was more of a kind of NFL approach, which was, you plop 60 or 70,000 seats down, and it's sort of one big consistent bowl. Sightlines are great, and you've got all the concourses and all this stuff, but you really were losing a lot of the sort of magic of what I believe the traditional English football grounds brought. So was kind of an interesting moment because as an American from Los Angeles, I thought I would have a hard time, convincing anyone that I would understand English football. But in some ways, I think it became my superpower was understanding that that's what this is really about. And again, it was Bill Kenwright, it was Robert Elstone that really communicated that to me. And then one funny story is that the first sketches I did, and goes back 10 years ago now. I looked it up that my very first sketches were late 2014, early 2015. And they were really something like what I was just talking about, this kind of exposed structure and different shapes to the building, anything but a sort of consistent bowl. And Bill Kenwright said, "Yeah, I get it, but we don't want something that feels old fashioned. It's got to be historic, but also contemporary." And by that time, we were now looking at Bramley Moore, and then there was a very simple sketch from that meeting that I had this idea of this kind of building that grew out of the dock, and really felt like the tobacco warehouse and the Titanic and all those brick structures around there, that was the base of it. But then coming out of it was this very contemporary form that I started thinking about, like the blue wave of the Mersey coming over, washing over the riverside. And that little sketch really did sort of develop into the building that you see.
But you didn't take it literal though, Dan. It wasn't kind of we're building on the dock, so we've got to build on water. It was not. It doesn't have to be that sort of thing. Was it always going to be the case that we would fill in one of the areas on the dock? Was that always
Yeah,
going to be?
I mean, yeah, it became pretty clear that the only way that was going to be viable is for us to fill the dock. And I knew that was a big challenge. I had an early meeting with Farhad and Bill Kenwright, and we talked about it. And I said, there are a lot cheaper places to build. It can be done from an engineering perspective, but a lot of your investment is going to go into just making it a buildable site. And to their credit, again, I hope no one ever forgets this. It was a really bold decision because they could have found another site. I mean, there weren't a lot of sites. Obviously, it's a difficult thing to find anywhere, but knowing that it was going to be a significant investment just to make it a buildable site, without that necessarily guaranteeing them any more revenue. It was a very selfless decision that they believed that was the best thing for the city and for the long-term history for the club and the entire region. And again, it was a struggle, and we went through a lot of ups and downs with COVID and the Russia-Ukraine situation. There were lots of things that could have killed the project along the way. But I think everybody should be really proud that they did make that decision and stuck with it and delivered it.
Yeah, and I think there's, I mean, Bill Kenwright and Farhad Mashu would have told you, I'd imagine, about certainly Bill, about the options that were put to us or put forward in the past. The one on the other side of the dock, Kirby was obviously one mentioned. I mean, I'm not speaking on behalf of all Evertonians, but personally, I'm glad that they didn't come to fruition. And we've actually landed on this because it's an ideal position, I think.
Yeah. It's funny. It wasn't without worry. Not so much the filling of the dock. I knew from an engineering perspective that was possible, just expensive. But there were many times I woke up in the middle of the night and I thought, does it really fit in that direction? It's the right direction for given the sun angles and everything, how you want to orient the pitch. But intuitively, when you look at the shape of the original dock, it felt like it should go the other way. And I literally would wake up in the middle of the night and I would write to my guys and say, measure it again. I want to make sure it really does fit. And I was so worried we'd made a mistake. But now to see it there, it seems like it fits really well. And the fan plaza is really big. And so, it was a lot of worry for nothing, but it did keep me up at night.
Yeah,
I mean, you was probably seeing every day how passionate Everton fans are, which added extra pressure. I think you took on a stadium for the most passionate fans and the critical. We are passionate fans, and I think if anything went wrong, I bet you thought I've got to get this right. You've done a lot of stadiums before, which Paul was telling me about, and he'll talk about. But You kind of went into it there. Do you fear that it could go wrong, that it's all on you?
Well, sure. And again, I mean, to your point, and we could talk about this for the whole time, that I've never had an experience like this. And part of it was, a lot of it was who this fan base is and who you are in terms of the passion for the club and the feeling of ownership. I often tell owners that you may think you own this club, but I promise you there's a couple 100,000 people out there that know they own this club. And so but what was different here that I'd never experienced before was the opportunity to actually interact with the fans very early. And not only the presentations, that the club was really great at fostering, social media, something that I'd never experienced. I had, hundreds of people write me a day on Twitter, like, why aren't we doing this? Or why is it this way? And can it be bigger? All the various things. So I really did feel like it was a collaboration with the fans along the way too. And that's been an experience that I don't think I'll ever have again. It's going to be hard to ever find another project like it.
When we was going through, when we was going through all the relegation battles, I mean, we've had some rough times this last couple of years. We was thinking if we got relegated, the stadium we might not be able to financially even build this stadium. And on this Toffee Bluecast, we do match reactions, and we just kept saying, look how beautiful that stadium is. We're putting the pictures up. That's the light at the end of the tunnel. Just stay in the Premier League, stay financially okay. Don't get relegated and just let this stadium happen. And that could look after us and be the light at the end of the tunnel. And we are there.
Yeah.
Paul, what was you going to chuck on? Sorry.
No, I was just going to mention in the early days, did you go to any matches at Goodison? Did you sort of do quite a few, I'd imagine, or...
Yeah. I mean, and you can imagine that, because this is what I do, I am a big fan of just sports in general and the sort of spectacle of event. But I knew that I couldn't really understand the fans or the club without spending time at Goodison. So I went to every match I could when I was in town, and I had a couple seats behind columns at times. And, usually, obviously, the club's taking care of me, but I wanted to get the full experience. And I recognized pretty early on, again, that there's something really truly magical about how you connect with a building like that. And this gets back to what I was saying before, that I think it's such a shame to see what's happened with some of the other modern buildings and clubs like West Ham that left a traditional building and have struggled with the experience in the Olympic Stadium. And I was really worried about that. Like, how do we make sure we don't lose what is this magic of Goodison? And we worked really hard to bring touches of it. But, for all of the concern of fans of, is it big enough? Do we have enough seats? I was really worried that it was going to be too big, and that, that people were going to feel like, oh my God, this is, sure, it's all big and new, but it's cavernous compared to, the bear pit that Goodison was. But we worked really hard, and I think we've already started to see the reaction to the very steep stands right on top of the pitch. You mentioned the Brighton game. I went to the Roma fixture, the friendly, before the Brighton game, and I was a little worried because it was pretty quiet, honestly. The Roma fans, they knew what they were doing, and they made a lot of noise. But I've experienced this before with other new buildings I've done. That initially people are just kind of looking around and kind of amazed at the space and not really focused. And of course, that game didn't matter. But Brighton, totally wiped away any fears of that, because the fans became exactly what I'd hoped they would, and it makes a huge difference to the play on the pitch.
Yeah, and I think with the Roma game just being a friendly as well, I think lots of Evertonians were shocked at the Wi-Fi and the signal that you could actually get on your phones. So I might have spent the first 45 minutes or even the first game just sort of, wow, this is amazing. We can actually use our phone. But by the time Brighton came along, I think that had sort of passed and everything else. What I mentioned, it was after our game against Liverpool when we won 2-2. And I was at that game. I was at that game where I was actually in the lower Bullens at the back. So it's very much sort of down here and like this and everything else. After that game with Dan, I mentioned that almost felt like the adrenaline of Goodison Park. It was all of those areas where it doesn't matter where we're sat, we're there for the game and for the team and everything else. And it was a really special evening. to then have that, were you worried, like you say, you just mentioned about it being quite open? Did you not ever feel as though you should put some absolute massive bollards in front of people, or have a little? I mean, was the massive problems in just having sort of the big south stand like Dortmund, the big wave? Was there any thought of having it a 2-tier at any point?
No, we definitely, it would be a big decision. I guess I have said, or I have, I did a building in Milwaukee for a ballpark where just it's a retractable roof, and there was a requirement to bring some columns into the very back of the upper bowl, but it takes a big wedge of seats out. We would never put seats where there would be an obstructed view. So
yeah,
we joked about it because there was so much character in Goodison, and people loved the things that even they hated about it, obviously, in times. But no, we were pretty determined that if we made it steep enough and kept the seats right on the ends of the pitch, and again, if you compare it to some of the other new buildings, it's tighter in lots of ways than a lot of the new buildings, and I think that comes through. And I wanted to say this, God, when I was at the Brighton game and I got interviewed, I meant to say this and I forgot that I get so much attention for drawing this building or sketching that original sketch, but obviously it's the fans that are the stadium. I mean, it's really just the mechanism that's holding them there, and that's why that's all so important to me, because I recognize how much the fans play a role in how the team is doing. And it's obviously an umbilical relationship, and it's sometimes chicken and egg.
yeah,
but the more the fans, and back to your point about the struggles during relegation, I often got into Twitter discussions with people about the club and how they were, and the team. We weren't even talking about the building, but I was trying to get people keep the faith, because this is really hard. Only one team wins every year. It's really hard to do, and injuries can play a role. But the one thing that goes without saying is you, the fans, make a difference, and the more you can stay behind the club, the better the club's going to play ultimately. And the building now, I think that's the great advantage we'll have, is we have a much bigger building with these really intense steep stands that are going to I think really pull the balls into the goal lots more than we've seen.
Yeah,
there's a comment that's just come in. I'm just going to chuck this one on, Paul. We'll chuck others on as we go. We'll try and get a few on. We are sticking to half an hour on the show, people, so do get your comments in as much as we could keep Dan on all night. So we've got in for half an hour. Where did the rail seating idea come from, Dan, as it's the first in the UK?
A lot of the clubs have put it in now, and I've looked at. I mean, all of the clubs would like to bring it in. I think the one thing that's hard for people to understand sometimes is that it's not going to, certainly not in the near future. I believe it's not going to change the capacity of the building, because it's allowing people to stand up because that's what they want to do, and that creates those really effective supporter areas. But the problem that came from overcapacity is not just the safe standing; it's the fact that you had too many people for the exits and the aisleways and all of that. So I don't think it's going to really change capacity in any great way, but it does allow people to really create those home pitch advantage type stands.
Yeah, and I'm glad you sort of mentioned that as well, because we have had a few people, and we get Ganymede there, and there was one or two other people previously about why is it only 53,000, or are we going to make it larger in the future and stuff like that. But obviously, there's lots of considerations, isn't there? It's not just, we can make it as big as we like. There's got to be key things in there, I'd imagine.
Yeah, and we talked a little bit about the site. We knew that as soon as we were settled on the site, we knew we weren't going to build a 75,000 seat stadium. Just, no matter what the cost, it just would not fit there. So, but I also believe that I understand the ambition side of people wanting it to be bigger and comparing themselves to Anfield. But this is one of the things I've argued over Twitter for years with fans, is that it's such a fine formula to try and right size a building to make sure that it's always full. That the minute, what I was saying about the fans being the stadium, the minute a building isn't full, and you see this with Man City, a really strong club, but there are times where that building isn't full, and you can tell how the play on the pitch is changed by the lack of atmosphere. So making sure the building is always full is really critical. And it also, not to get in the weeds about it, but it becomes an important part of how the club plans its finances, because it really counts on season tickets to understand what its revenue projections are. And if there are always seats available, people are less likely to buy season tickets because they can just walk up and buy a ticket. So, it just becomes a kind of domino effect. And I think in the end, this really is the right size for the building and the site. And it really is going to make a difference, because I don't think you're ever going to see a big section of empty seats.
Well, I think that showed when I seen your how loud it was at the stadium. It was one of the loudest.
Yeah.
People say more people in, but it couldn't be any louder. I think if it was any louder, it reported for people becoming deaf in the stadium. It was super. That must have made you really proud to sit in there in the stadium. Something that you've designed. And this is the thing, like when we put on this earth, for me personally, you want to do something that's important, do something to be remembered, have a legacy. And that stadium's going to be there for 100+ years now. And you've designed that. And Everton Football Club is a big football club as well. That must have made you proud, that game, to have sat there, for it to have been that loud. And for Everton fans, when I went on X afterwards, I've never seen so many people happy. Pictures of the stadium, everyone, really good reaction for it. How did you feel?
Yeah, I've been fortunate. I've had an amazing career, and I've done incredible buildings. The Staples Center for the LA Lakers, when the Lakers, Kobe and Shaq, and so I've had experiences like that where I've designed this building, and it's become this amazing experience thing. What I've never had is what I experienced going to the stadium and, having fans come up and thank me, and, emotional, because it means so much to them. And I posted this a couple times that, there's some great shots. Like, my wife and I were walking behind a father with his little girl who was going to her first match. And there was a little boy that came up through and saw the building for the first time, and he was clearly emotional about it. That's what is life changing for me. I've had lots of incredible experiences, but this club is really unique. And the sort of outpouring of love that I've felt from the fans, I'll never experience that again. It truly is a once in a lifetime thing. I mean, I almost should just stop doing this now and move to Liverpool and open a little office, I guess, because it'll never get better.
Well, I think not to blow too much smoke, like, but I think I know transfer, has just finished, but I think probably one of our best signings was you, Dan. To be honest, because if you look at what you've done, I don't think people realise what it was to bring you in. I mean, obviously you got the new. Correct me if I'm wrong on any of these, by the way, but obviously the Stadio della Roma for the Roma Stadium, the Saudi Arabian Stadium as well, Sports City, that was in the Qatar World Cup, the Crypto.com arena at the moment, the Lakers, the Kings, Lincoln Field for Philadelphia Eagles. I know we've got lots of people who are NFL fans. I mean, closer to home, Manchester Arena. So I know I was saying to Dan before, I've been looking. I mean, Toffee Bluecast, Dan. This Dan has been in Time magazine, for crying out loud. 100 innovators in world sport. So, it's a fantastic signing to get our stadium. And I think because obviously you've got some big things, or SoFi Stadium has got things coming up over the next few years as well, Dan. You're going to be even more famous. Don't forget us, by the way. But where is it SoFi or SoFi Stadium?
SoFi.
SoFi. Yeah. So LA Rams and the Chargers play there, but it's going to be part of the World Cup in 2026. The Super Bowl is going to be held there in 2027, and Summer Olympics 28.
Yeah, right? Yeah. I think swimming. Now, I didn't design SoFi, but the company I'm with built it. So
exactly. Yeah. So all parts of it. And Mark Thomas, who's a friend of the show, Mark's been on. There's been a few people with drones. No more than anyone than Luke, our friend, School of Science, and especially Mark as well. Spent lots of times filming the stadium, great pictures, and everyone shared them and stuff. So I'd imagine you've seen one or two of those as well.
Oh yeah, it's been incredible. I mean, again, it's another thing that's been unique about this project for me is, I've in years past they've set up kind of a project camera that you could log on to see, but I didn't have to worry about any of that. I between all the drone things and Mark's daily coverage and fans sending me pictures, it's just been just a truly one of a kind experience all the way through. And I became an Evertonian in the process too. I mean, I get up at 4 a.m. lots of times to watch the matches, and I went through those same struggles that you guys did, and lots of worry, lots of times. But and not because of the project, but because I really have grown to love the club. So it's just been unique in so many ways for me.
Yeah, well, we're all born not manufactured, Dan. We're all born not manufactured, so maybe just didn't realise it until this time.
Maybe that's right.
I meant to have said this earlier on, and I was backtracking a little bit, but on the stadium, for me, I live Whitby near the sea and all that. Like, I like my sea, I like my water. It makes such a difference to me, the stadium near the dock. Does water? Do you find that the stadiums just look, even with the sunset coming up over the water, when near the dock, was that important to you? Because I just think it makes it look twice as beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's one of those things that you can't. Typically you don't get those kind of opportunities to put a stadium at the front door of a city, and the vista from the river, the ability to, like, one of the early renderings we did was to show the reflection of the big window in the water, just across on the dock next door. And I remember people saying, well, that might not be water, but everything about it, the site is just it's been a jewel for us. Now it created additional challenges because you've got to get everybody in from one side, which is unusual. Typically you want to feed a stadium from multiple areas if you can, but in the end, people will, again, that makes it English football to me. These buildings grew up in neighborhoods, and they figure out how to get to their favorite pub or their way of getting to the stadium. And I just think it makes it feel like it's always been there, and yet it's brand new. That's something that I really cared about from the very beginning.
I've been doing like little video edits of it, like the battlefield near the sea. That's what it feels like, a big where the ships come over, a big battlefield near the sea, and especially with how steep you've met. I love how steep it is as well, because there was a picture that was taken when the stadium was like half done, where the seats was. Someone took the picture. Sometimes you can take a picture where the seats make it look even more higher.
It almost looked vertical, didn't it? Yeah,
vertical.
I remember that picture.
And I put that picture up, and I remember it going in the paper. I just put on it, look how steep this is. This is amazing. And it went. I knew it wasn't that steep, but it went around, and it really does. I think that's why it's loud, though, because I don't think the sound can get out because it is so steep. And I love that, because it's like a proper battlefield. And I think that is why it is so loud. But it isn't. It's fine. It's steep, people, but it wasn't as steep as it looked in that picture.
Yeah. I really hope that that's what people and that's the influence that I want to have on future buildings in the UK, is that there is so much magic to the history of English football and why the Premier League became the Premier League, and so much of it is the character of those buildings and all of that stuff. I mean, of course, the revenue stuff and the suites and the boxes and all the stuff in the concourses, it's important to revenue, but you really have to have the fans right on top of the pitch if you want to have that kind of experience. And I hope it really becomes a model for other buildings going forward.
We are going to shoot that. So, Paul, have you got two more questions that we can chuck to Dan before we finish the show? Pick two questions out, and then we'll let him crack on.
It's funny, actually. Some of them have been answering their own questions. So Eltal had mentioned about the noise rebounding.
Sure.
It's all right. We've got Mark Thomas on hand to talk about that as well.
Yeah, that was a big part of the engineering design. Yeah.
Is that going to be I mean, you've done it now, Dan, so I presume lots of people are going to sort of copy and then anything else. But is that what we're going to be looking at for stadiums in the future to keep things more
Well, I hope
compact?
so, but
Or what are
again,
we looking forward to,
you know,
really?
every project depends on a collaboration between the designers and the club. And we've seen other new buildings in the UK that didn't take that approach because they had other concerns. They wanted to be more multi-purpose, or they wanted to be more like an international stadium and less like a historic English ground. So it really depends on the club. But I'm confident that there were lots of reasons why this building is the way it is, and I think everybody recognizes how unique this fan base is, and how important they can be to what happens on the pitch. What would be incredible, obviously, is if we have an incredible season in the building and people start to realize that the building's playing a role in that, and then I think other clubs will want to emulate it for sure.
Cool, excellent. And often the joke is about how steep it is and how you get to row 63 on the south stand. Is there anything we could do about that, or are we just gonna sort of just get fit? I think we're just gonna have calves as big as Jack Grealish is the
Yeah,
thing.
I think that's right. I think it does require you to be pretty fit to get, but it is one of those things that's hard to have it both ways. You have to have a big, intimidating stand, and somebody's going to want to climb up there. And the great thing is, if they were sitting in that back seat in a less steep stadium, they would feel much farther away. So, there is the
Exactly.
benefit once they get there, they still feel like they're closer to the pitch than they might be
Well,
elsewhere.
you won't need your binoculars.
No,
Yeah,
and you mentioned
that's
West
right.
Ham before. If we are very much like that, West Ham is very much like
Yeah,
that. So
yeah, and
I'd
starting
certainly prefer to be as we are, I think.
right, and starting right, at the touch line. I mean, that makes a big difference too. So yeah. Speaking of Jack
Right.
Grealish, I got to tell you, that was my first time seeing him play live, and I mean, yeah, what an amazing show. Like, I've never seen a player look so calm and relaxed, and yet be so effective. So that's going to be a really fun thing to watch.
I've become obsessed with at the pub. There was like, do you fancy him or something? I goes, he is amazing. He's had 4 or 5 assists already. He's only had 3 games. I said he's incredible, and I can't. I did say on Toffee Bluecast when he was linked. I said that guy's getting written off at Man City, but we'll get the player he was at Aston Villa, and I said we'll probably even get more of a player because he'll be a man on a mission after. And I know when I used to play football, being on the bench kills you, and I think he had that time out, and he's come back a man on a mission. And this international break's killing me because I just want my Jack Grealish. I want to watch him play again.
Yeah,
he is that
I
good.
know. I feel the same way, and I think it's everybody has their time and everybody has their club, and I think you can see in his face that he's really feeding on what it's like, the right person for the right club kind of thing. But it was so great to see how at ease he was, in that play, and tossing out those assists, like, oh yeah, this is what I do.
I think
it was really cool.
That's massive on. We spoke about it a minute ago. That's massive on this stadium because I feel David Moyes has started to bring in players with personality, and I think to get you talk about the atmosphere, to get you off your seat, you need players with personality on the pitch. And
Right.
Jack Grealish can get you off your seat. Illiman and Jai can get you off your seat. Tyler Diblin's coming very skillful as well. We've got a lot of players now that are getting us really excited, so that can build up the atmosphere in this state. I think going forward now, I'm really excited. I think things are only going to get better, and I want to see us lift a trophy in that. I want us to go back to our history. I don't want to always talk about our history and that be when we won a trophy. Paul, we're going to do it, ain't we? Everton, we're going to get good again. We're going to win a trophy in that stadium. That'll be good for you.
Yeah. And when we look back, this will be the catalyst. I mean, Danny Ellis there, I presume he's talking about Jack Grealish, but he might be talking about Dan Meis, and I don't know. I think either one you would still make a cup of tea for. So,
well, you guys will have to have me back to talk about the match or the just the season at some point, because I love talking about that too. So
Definitely get him on a pre-match. Definitely get him on a pre-match.
He is a massive Toffee. He's more of he's massive. He's obsessed. Once Everton touches you, he's absolutely hooked. And we'd love to get you on. We'll get you on and we'll talk about Jack Greaves for about 2 hours. Don't worry.
All right, I'm in. Yeah.
When we win the league, we'll be celebrating. At the end of this season, we'll be lifting a cup and we'll have you on celebrating with us on the Toffee Bluecast, and we'll get all the other Toffee Bluecasters on. Right, people, we've gone over the half an hour, 6 minutes over, but such a good guest. What could we do? But that is it. Last words?
Well, for me, it's just been, God, thanks. Again, to all the fans, it's been an incredible honor. Again, life-changing for me, and can't tell you how much I appreciate all the love that the fans have shown, and just can't wait to see how the rest of the season plays out.
Awesome. And it sounds as though there's a few free beers for you there ready for you when you come back.
Free beers for life. If he ever goes to that stadium, free beers for life, because we love that. We really do. And we're going to do our best to do the best we can with it. Right. That is the end of the show, people. I'm a boss one. I know you would love this one. Dan Mars on the show. What a guest. Dropping the banner now, people. I'm a boss one.
Great. Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Dan. Bye.